This is Mini Bike Build Part 2. If you missed Part 1, basically we just made this thing a roller, put dirt bike tires on it, cleaned up the frame a little bit. That's it. So in Part 2, we're going to get the motor put in, we're going to get all the chain drive set up, and we'll actually have an operating mini bike by the end of this video. So first thing I'm doing here is just tearing down the motor, air cleaner, exhaust, gas tank, and I had a lot of trouble getting this pulley off. It's sat outside for a couple years and it's rusted on. Somebody drove a piece of bar stock in the keyhole. It's a mess, so you'll see how that kind of goes when we get into some of the frame cutting and welding later.
Check that out. Nice and hot. Well, it's not supposed to be that hard, but it's sat outside for a couple years and the set screw won't come out, won't budge. Exhaust off, fuel tank off, got the pulley off, had to cut it in half, but it's off. Check that out. So the motor is about, with the plug, I'd say about 2 inches too high, too tall. So we're gonna have to make the frame a good 2 inches taller. I'm going to get a shorter plug, try to find a shorter plug. It'll help a little bit. Looks like it should save us half, 3/4 of an inch. Could do that, or we could go buy a Predator motor. I think you know what we're going to do. So I'm going to start, I'm going to cut the frame here. I'm going to cut it here. I might go further back depending on how it works out, but if this from here to here were 2 inches higher, it'd be okay. But I don't really want to do just a 90-degree. We're going to cut it here, figure out what we're going to do after we cut it. So I'm kind of thinking, slide this over these two pipes, bend them up, get a little bit of, I'm not going to be able to bend this, I don't have any real way to bend it nice, so I'm going to cut it almost all the way through, fold it, weld it back together so it'll have like, it'll be angled, not curved. Not easily. Pretty stout frame. Oh. spinning, but not far enough. So yeah, something like that. Seems to look okay. Might need to bend it up just a hair more. Cut it here. Start tapering it down to the back. So it looks like we're going to need a jack shaft. So that fits, kinda. So I got the shorter plug in. I welded some bolts to the frame to hold the jack shaft. It's pretty close to what I want. I'm going to need to clean up the paint so I can weld it all back together, but that's basically how it's going to be. I'll give you a closer look at it. So I'm going to have to hold it together and tack it and get rid of some of those gaps. Twist it around, make it straight, whatever I need to do while I'm welding. That's likely going to be my exhaust. It's a conduit. And I'll show you later how I plan to attach that, because I don't have the correct threaded pipe to thread into the head. Drilled that out through the outer layer, and the tube is still inside of there, so I'm going to weld the outer layer to the inner layer. It's a good probably 8 or 9 inches of space there that it's not even connected, so it may help some, it may not. I've got new fuel line. The old stuff was pretty well dry rotted. I went to AutoZone to get fuel line, and when I got home, they gave me vacuum hose. So I just went to O'Reilly and they took good care of me. I think I'll quit going to AutoZone. I've had a lot of problems. We'll see. I got a new twist throttle. It's $10 on eBay. It's not the greatest quality, but it's good enough for what we're doing, which is also not the greatest quality, you could say. Got a clutch, centrifugal clutch. It's a 14 tooth sprocket, 1-inch bore. I wanted the 10 tooth sprocket, but I couldn't get that for a reasonable price. This was $20. I actually, on eBay, purchased a 10 tooth sprocket for $53, and they canceled my order and said they didn't have it in stock, and they raised the price of it to $100 and some. So for $20 I just got a 14 tooth. And then that will go to this 18 tooth sprocket on the jack shaft, which will also have this 12 tooth to go to the rear tire. I'm trying to gear it down a little bit. I don't want it to be too crazy. And I'm not sure how many teeth this rear sprocket has, but I would rather just be able to take off and ride it than top speed. I'm not going to have it on the road. My yard's pretty bumpy. No suspension. That's the story. So on the bike, probably not going to show you what I built that tank out of, because I can't recommend that you do that. It's what I had laying around. It's temporary, supposedly, but I mean, if it works, I might not change it. Another issue, I'm not sure I mentioned this before, but the sprocket is pretty close to the frame. Not enough room to get my chain on there. What I could do is scoot the whole tire over, take this spacer out right here, and move the whole tire over and make it off center, but I would rather cut a notch out of my frame than have a tire that sits off center with the tubes. And yeah, I just like symmetrical, somewhat symmetrical things, even if they are junky. So I'm going to cut a notch out of the frame, probably just turn it around and weld it back in. I'm not really too concerned about the strength of the frame right there. The frame's pretty thick. It's not like something you would buy today that they just get by with the bare minimum thickness. And it's pretty thick and beefy, so I'm going to do that. Square up my jack shaft with the rear sprocket, and then I will square up the engine with this sprocket. So we're starting back. You want everything to run nice and parallel with each other. Chain's going to stick out a little bit. I'm a little concerned about putting my kids on it, but we'll just slap a warning sticker on there and see how they like that. Should be riding soon. We've got the chain stuff to figure out, to mount the motor, the fuel line. I know there's a small hole in the gas tank. When I pressure checked it, there's a little tiny hole right there. Right there. Leaks. Get the throttle on. Maybe figure out one brake. I know the front brake will work. This back brake, this whole assembly here from this crease here is your brake, so it should not rotate with the tire. Right now it's frozen, so I'm going to take the rear tire apart and get that freed up. I don't have the bracket for it. The front's got the bracket. It's got the spot for your cable, and you pull on this and that's your front brake. The rear doesn't have that. It's got the spot for the cable. Doesn't have the bracket. I'm gonna say it's only gonna have front brakes, at least for a while. But for me, that's fine. For the kids, when they panic, they don't know which brake's which anyways. Probably just lay it over like they do the mini bike or on the 50. It'll probably just end up on its side with kids bailing off if the two kids that can ride. And maybe they won't ride it. They don't like ugly stuff. I'll try to get my wife on there. That'll be a good thing. She doesn't like ugly stuff either. Hard to believe, I know. So this is the piece I'm going to be welding in there. It's the top section out of an exhaust clamp. So see if you can get a picture of that. It's one side, and it's got a nice kind of round edge to it. It's really stout and stiff and thick enough. I think it'll work good to reinforce the frame there and fill that gap. And I just dropped it down inside the frame. So I get to fish that out now. So it's welded in. I ground down some of the weld where it was sticking out, where it was getting in the way of the chain. It's about half the tube. I'm a little bit concerned, but not really, because that piece was pretty thick that was stuck in there. The jack shaft has two grooves cut in it. I don't know if it'll focus. There you go. Two grooves cut in it, and those are for these snap rings. Snap rings, you know what a snap ring looks like. To hold the bearing from sliding either way. Well, it's also got this groove kind of cut into it, and as small as that looks, it gives my sprocket a lot of slop. And with the one bearing in this position, my sprocket falls right on this thin spot. So in order to not get my sprocket on sideways, because I will be welding this sprocket onto this shaft, because there is no keyway in the sprocket. I had all this stuff laying around, and if it loses a bearing or the teeth wear out, oh well, we're gonna start over if it comes to that. Probably just buy an off-the-shelf $50 eBay or Amazon jack shaft and go that route. So yeah, we will be welding at least one sprocket to this shaft. So that being said, I'm also going to have to weld either tacks close to the bearing or weld a washer on close to the bearing to keep this bar from shimmying either direction. None of it's ideal, but it's gonna work. It's not repairable. It's not something I would recommend people do, but it's parts I have. Besides the sprockets, I did buy those. And you can see I just bought this on eBay. It's new old stock. It's got rust on it. It was cheap. It was like $9. The other one is new, and it was, I would say, 15 bucks. So, like I said, not ideal. Not the end of the world if it goes out. It'll just be an opportunity to maybe make things better. Change gear ratio. We'll see. But that's what we're going to do. And we're going to hope that it works great. And I think that it will. So I'm going to go through here, through there, and I had a washer. I'm not sure that I'll use this, but put that on. Well, actually I won't use it. Yeah, I'll try it that way. And I think we got to feed from the other way because that side's boogered a little bit. So we'll go through that bearing, through the washer, through the small sprocket, through the other bearing. And this one is keyed. This is the one that goes on the end. It's got a key on it. So I'm not going to weld that unless it moves, and then I will. So, and then we get that. So that's going to be our setup. It's going to be pretty close to what you see now, with this engine sprocket being less teeth than this. That's a gear reduction. And then with this being less than this, this is a 18 I think I said, and a 12, that's a gear reduction. So even though I didn't get my 10 sprocket, 10 tooth clutch, I'm still gearing it down back here. I don't know the math on it. It's just a wild guess. We'll see how it works. And if it works good, you can build one that way. And if it doesn't work good, you'll know not to build one that way. So, at my expense, you're welcome. You know, there's different ways to accomplish things. Being that I'm a redneck, I think I will just use a nail, like I always do. Maybe a tougher nail than that, though. There we go. So that's my length of chain from the jack shaft to the rear tire. I got the chain system all mocked up. Sticks out a little further than I like, but when I turn the clutch around, you have this bigger part of the clutch sticking out here. I didn't like that either, so of the two options, I went with this. I took some spray paint, sprayed down my holes so I can figure out right where to drill the holes. So I'm going to pop the motor out, drill my holes. I'm going to take this off because the motor won't go back far enough to get a whole link on the chain, and it's pretty much where I want it. It's got a little slop in it, but I think that would be fine, but there wouldn't be any adjustment if I left it there. So I'm going to take the motor off, drill my holes, got the chain drive all set up, the little sprocket that runs the rear tire welded on. This one, this outer sprocket will be our gear change if we need to change the gear in it. Hopefully it holds, won't have to weld anything, should be okay. Marked the motor holes with the spray paint. It's all bolted down, it's on there. I'm going to do the fuel lines and the exhaust. So I want to show you the exhaust, how I'm going to do that. The threads on the head are stripped out, so I'm going to take this piece here, just a washer. See if I can get you to zoom in. It's just a washer on a threaded pipe. I clearanced it for the intake. See that little notch cut out of it. And then there's two holes for the bolts. I'm going to drill those out. I'm going to run a bead around the washer to connect it to the threaded part. And then this galvanized conduit, see if you can get it, it's 1 inch, is going to slide on there, and it's going to be a nice straight exhaust. Something like that. Right out the back. And then if that's too loud, I'll buy a small muffler to put here or back here, but I'm not really worried about noise. I only have a couple of neighbors. So that'll be our exhaust. We'll run our fuel line, do our exhaust, put some air in the tires. Gonna put the throttle on still, that's pretty easy. Just tighten these two bolts onto your two screws onto your bar, and this is what you get. So that shouldn't be too much of a hassle. I gotta figure out a way to hook this to the Briggs setup. When I get it figured out, I'll show you what I do. It's probably not going to be anything elaborate, but Got the fuel line on, got the exhaust bolted on, welded up, and the little hole in the gas tank. We're gonna put some gas in it and see if it'll start up. I gotta put a little bit of air in the tires. I've got, let's see, got the throttle hooked up. Seems to work pretty good. I'm going to cut this off real quick, the rest of this jack shaft. I'm going to just slice it off. The exhaust, it needs actual bolts, but those screws are the only short things I had with the right thread on it, so I'm going to have to get some bolts for that. Yeah, we'll be putting gas in it and starting it up soon. So that's not good. Carry a wrench around with me to put fuel in this thing. Let's hope she don't leak. Should hold about a quart, maybe. I don't know. I'd like to get a different tank for it. I didn't build this with the intentions of keeping it forever, but you know how that goes. If it works, why change it, right? It'll start. Give it a minute to drain down. Can't tell if it's leaking because I spilled gas everywhere. So see if it'll start. Adjust the idle a little bit. You can see that galvanized pipe. It's starting to smoke a little bit. That's definitely not something you want to have in your garage. So I'm going to get it down and take it outside and let that burn off.
So we took the mini bike out, rode it. Um, it was a lot of fun. It's geared pretty well. I'm 220 pounds. It's not too much top end. It's pretty well balanced between top end and having the power to take off. So here's a video of me riding it, and in the next video will be me riding it with a breakdown of what kind of money I have in it. So keep an eye out for that video. It'll be out here pretty soon. It's going to be nice tomorrow here in Indiana, so I'll probably be out riding it, taking a video. So here we go. I want to say thanks to my daughter for taping this, being my camera girl. It fired right back up. Well, guys and girl, thanks for watching the Not So Fancy Garage. Keep an eye out for our upcoming videos. We'll have another one of this bike and the cost of it. We're doing a mini four-wheeler build. Have some information on the Datsun you've seen in the background and some other stuff. If you have any recommendations, let us know. Like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for watching.